loved to you because I couldn't bear not to, because I wanted to more than anything. I don't regret it, and I don't want you to regret it either." Her small hands circled his wrists. "I don't." He rested his forehead against hers and breathed in her scent of soft flowers. "I feel as if I've known you a long time," she whispered, "as if I'm saying goodbye to an old, dear friend." "I will miss you too," he admitted, before taking her mouth and kissing her deeply. A kiss that was meant to say farewell, a memento to last him an eternity. Then her taste, sweet and heady like wine, flowed over his tongue and intoxicated him. "Lissa," he groaned his misery and need into her mouth. Her slender arms tried valiantly to encircle his broad shoulders, then gave up and slid down to embrace his straining back. All the while he drank the flavor of her, stroking his tongue between her parted lips as he wanted to do with his cock, sliding his calloused hands down the smooth skin of her sides. His eyes closed. Aiden tilted his head, fitting his lips to her softer ones, swallowing her whimpers with a shudder that racked the length of his frame. She gave as good as she got, her hands sliding beneath his shirt, caressing his bare skin, her hips arching into him, the invitation blatant and tinged with the same desperation he felt. When her tongue tangled with his, he pulled away with a curse, every muscle on fire with tension. He nibbled her jaw, licked and bit at her neck, distracted her as he cupped her full breast, kneading it, feeling it grow heavy with her desire. Impatient, he shoved away the fabric that intruded and caught her nipple with his fingers, rolling it, tugging it, squeezing it with varying pressure. "Yes," she breathed, urging him to take all that he wanted, failing to see how starved he was for her, starved for the feeling of connection he had found with her. Lowering his head, he took her in his mouth, her nipple a hard, silken delight. He suckled her with hunger, his cheeks hollowing with every drawing pull, his tempo rhythmic and designed to make her cunt clench for him, to make her ache as he did. She cupped his ass, squeezed, urged him against her. Through the thin fabrics between them, he felt her heat, and he squeezed his eyes shut, his nose pressed to her skin so that every breath he took was Lissa, a scent that would forever be imprinted on his memory. Sadness welled within him, and he lifted his head. How much worse would his attachment be if he took her again? Already all other women had lost their ability to entice him. Her eyes fluttered open. With her ravished mouth and swollen nipple, she was a picture of wanton abandon. He could lower her to the sand and free his cock. A quick tug would pull her swimsuit aside, allowing him to sink into her creamy depths. In all his life, he had never wanted anything as much. "I'm afraid of what will happen," she breathed, her chest rising and falling with her labored breathing. "If we make love again, I want more, Aiden." Pulling her tight against him, Aiden rested his cheek on the top of her head. "I'm sorry I can't give it to you." He forced himself to release her, to relinquish her warm, curvy body, forever. She righted her swimsuit and looked at him with big, dark eyes. "I'm happy you came, even though you can't stay." His thumb caressed the curve of her cheekbone. "Goodbye, Lissa." "Goodbye." Turning on his heel, he left her. He felt her watching him all the way until the door shut and became an impassable barrier between them. Chapter 4. "You have broken one of our most sacred laws, Captain Cross." The sea of gray-shrouded faces before Aiden nodded as one. "We do not choose the assignments given to guardians lightly. It is not your place to reassign yourself and others to suit your own needs." He stood impassive, his hands laced at his back, his stance wide as if prepared for a blow, which he was. He'd known the risks when he went to Lissa. He had accepted them in return for a few moments with her, and the price was worth being able to hold her as he had. "You set the example for others," the elder continued. "Any transgressions on your part can start a chain of disobedience. Because of this, you will spend the next fortnight at the gateway." He flinched inwardly. The contrast of his new assignment to the joy of Lissa's presence was similar to the contrast between hell and heaven. But perhaps his time at the gateway would be good for him. He certainly would not have the luxury of thinking of her there. "You will begin immediately, Captain." He bowed before turning on his heel. Having expected some onerous task, he had dressed for battle, and his glaive hung securely in the scabbard that crossed his back. His boots tapped ominously on the marble floor as he left the Haydn and descended the steps to the open courtyard. Around him, casually robed guardians stared. Some furtively, others openly. He'd broken a law that had not been broken in centuries, and everyone wanted to know what the punishment would be for so grave an offense. With a leap, he departed, gliding rapidly through the misty twilight toward the reddish glow that illuminated the tops of a distant mountain range. As always, he was grateful for the hours-long length of the journey. It allowed him time to sort his thoughts, and then clear them away. At the gateway, guardians could think of nothing besides maintaining their grip on their glaives and ignoring the exhausted burning of their muscles. There would be precious little rest and food over the next 2 weeks. All guardians who wished to join the ranks of the elite were required to spend a month at the gateway. The vast majority failed in that task. Once every century he returned, as all the elite did, to remember how vital their task was. The stay was only a few days in duration, just enough to reinforce, but not enough to lose hope. 2 weeks would seem an eternity. He paused at the top of the range and stared down at the horrors below. The vast door to the outer realm bulged with the effort to contain the nightmares within. A mere crack of red revealed how the portal strained at the hinges and lock. From that tiny opening, black shadows flowed like water, pouring out and infecting the twilight around the gateway, until lava-spewing pustules formed from the ground. Guardians by the thousands fought an endless battle, their glaives flashing with ruby light as they cut down nightmares in countless numbers. Misery and despair was a fetid stench in the air. His stomach roiled, but that, too, was thrust away from his thoughts. Descending the rocky cliff face while cutting a swath through the flood of shadows, Aidan tried to ignore the screams the nightmares made just before they burst into puffs of foul-smelling ash. Their cries were high-pitched, a near whine that sounded like a child's call for help. It was a horrifying sound that could drive a man mad, and it battered him from all sides. The guardians at the bottom noted his approach and began to fight with renewed vigor, taking comfort in his presence. Their regard depleted him, sapped his strength, weighted him down. He could not show fear or hunger or exhaustion in front of the others, and the energy required to maintain the facade had long ago become too draining. Suddenly the plan to forget Lissa in this hell was forgotten. Instead, her memory floated above all others, a shining beacon of hope and happiness, until all he thought of was her, and how he could be himself with her, take comfort in her, as he could with no one else. She was the power behind every swing of his glaive, every gasping breath, every growl that tore from his throat. She was the hope he had thought long dead, the goal to reach, the dream to work toward. It was no longer the key. It was Lissa. The door pushed open on well-oiled hinges. It was a near-soundless whoosh of air, but as had happened every day for the last 2 weeks, the hairs on Lissa's nape rose and her muscles tensed. Her entire body was anxiously awaiting the return of the man who stirred it so thoroughly, a man who never came. She stared down at her drawing pad and forced herself to relax. Against her back, the bark of an oak tree pressed into her skin. Around her, a green meadow with yellow wildflowers swayed gently in a softly fragrant breeze. Nearby, a stream flowed. Though she loved the beach more, she couldn't find it in her heart to imagine herself there again. The beach was Aiden, and lust, and longing, things she wanted desperately to feel, but refused to allow herself to. He would not return, and hoping for what would never be was a wasted endeavor. Still, she felt him. The power and strength he'd given to her with his caring had made her surroundings possible. Without him, she would still be sitting in the dark, going crazy. She sighed and went back to waiting for the night's guardian to appear, telling herself that she had to move on and be grateful for what she had shared with Aiden, even if she still wanted more. His people were an odd bunch, approaching her so cautiously, clearly uncomfortable with their inability to integrate themselves seamlessly into her dream world. The guardians requested that she perform odd exercises, but she remembered Aiden's admonishment to reveal nothing of importance. She never complied or showed them the skills she practiced when she was alone. They, in turn, never revealed very much about themselves. It was a bizarre arrangement, and she couldn't help but wonder how long it would go on. She also couldn't help but wonder where Aiden was, and what he was doing. Was he fighting with his sword somewhere, or living out some woman's fantasy? The last thought made her shiver with a cold chill that swept across her skin in a wave of goosebumps. It was then that she lifted her gaze and saw him. Aiden. She blinked to make certain it was he, and when his lusciousness didn't disappear, her heart raced with joy. He entered her dream with that carelessly arrogant stride she loved, but there was something different about him, an invisible mantle of great weight that seemed to hang on his shoulders. His chiseled features, so harshly, blatantly gorgeous, were set in hard, unyielding lines, his eyes cold, his steps relentless as he passed her and went to the stream. He began to strip off his garments, which were blackened by ash and singed in places. The golden skin of his back was bared to her hungry gaze, and then an ass so perfect it made her want to weep in awe. Still, he said nothing. Lissa struggled to think of something to say. Instead, she made the stream deeper and the water warmer, and put soap on the pebbled bank to assist his bathing. She widened the blanket she rested on, and pictured a picnic basket, then wine. All the while she watched him, her blood heating and then becoming sluggish with desire. His large hands soaped his chest, gliding over mouth-watering pecs and ridged abs, his biceps flexing and bunching with latent power. He was a sexual fantasy brought to life. The sight of him did crazy things to her nervous system, but what most affected her was the desolation in his blue eyes. What had he seen? Where had he been? His clothes and demeanor made it seem as if he'd gone to hell and back. What had they done to him to make him so empty? When Aiden sank beneath the surface to rinse his hair and then re-emerged, the sunlight caught the droplets on his skin, turning him into some ancient pagan god. Dripping and unabashed, he stepped naked onto the bank and made no effort to retrieve his clothes. She drank him in, every inch of his tawny skin, her gaze lingering on the heavy cock and balls that were impressive even without an erection. He sank to his knees beside her, and then caught her close before rolling to his back. They lay there, his embrace laced with an underlying possessiveness that thrilled her. His breath was hot at her crown, his hands kneading her spine. Inhaling the clean scent of his damp skin, Lissa stroked his chest in a rhythmic, soothing caress and felt at peace for the first time since he left. "It was selfish of me to return," he said finally, his soft brogue making her nipples ache. "If you need something from me, I want to give it to you. I'm going to hurt you, but I couldn't stay away." Lissa lifted her head and made a soft moo at the torment so evident in his features. "Why?" Why would he hurt her? Why couldn't he stay away? "I need you," he whispered hoarsely. "I'm here." She ran her fingers through his damp hair, then toyed with his pendant. "Tell me what happened." His large hand slid up to cup the back of her neck, and then pulled her down to his waiting lips. "I ache for you." He took her mouth with a deep glide of his tongue across hers. "Aiden," she sighed, her craving for him nearly unbearable. "Do you love him?" She blinked in surprise at his question, but didn't misunderstand. "Chad? No, we're just friends, although he would like to be something more, and I'm considering it." "Then let me have you again, one more time, before he takes you from me." The raw plea made no effort to hide within the brogue. That he should need her so much. That he would come to her despite the rules that said he shouldn't. That he would open himself to her so completely, broke open something inside her. She had heard tales of his prowess from the other guardians. She knew how fearsome he was, how powerful. He was a near legend among his people, held up as a model for others to emulate. Captain Aiden Cross was said to have no weakness, no qualms, only a single-minded pursuit of the destruction of his enemy. But that wasn't true. She knew him to be sensitive and kind in his own brooding way. His solitary house on the hill, far away from the nearest community, told her how he kept to himself. He was estranged from his family. Reclusive and alone, he was said to be a far different man from the one who had graduated from elite training with unbeatable scores and boundless optimism for the future. He leaned on no one, yet he reached out to her. "What can I do?" she asked, lost. This was not a medical problem with textbook answers. This was a wound to the soul, and she had no clue how to treat it. "Touch me," as he caught her hand and held it over his heart, his gaze locked with hers. "Seduce me, like you did that first night on the beach." For a breathless moment she stared at him. Her fierce warrior retained his humanity, his generosity of spirit, his capacity for kindness. Perhaps it was because of his ability to feel and empathize that his calling wounded him so deeply. Self-preservation be damned. He needed her, and she would do whatever was required to make him whole again. She crawled over him, her hips pressed to his, her hands on his chest, her only desire to tend to him and console him. Bending at the waist, Lissa licked his lips. "Like this?" "Yes." Her fingertips found the flat points of his nipples and rubbed. "This too?" He shivered, the sensation traveling up her arms and heating her blood. "Hell yes." His eyes drifted shut. Her lips to his ear, she asked, "What's your favorite color?" There was no hesitation. "The color of your eyes?" She blinked, startled. "They're shit brown." "They're beautiful," he murmured, stroking her back in a rhythmic caress. "I look into them and forget everything." Melting inside, she realized his tenderness was the catalyst her dreams had been missing her whole life. Only when she was with him did she feel the peace she needed to rest and recharge. She imagined away her clothes, leaving behind a chocolate-colored lace bra and thong set. In her waking life, she would never wear such an impractical bit of nothing, but this wasn't her waking life. Aiden was the man of her dreams, in every possible sense. Wiggling her hips, she let him feel her suddenly bare skin against his rock-hard cock. How about this? When his thick lashes lifted, she found herself staring into fathomless blue of such stark intensity. Her heart skipped a beat. I'm not leaving this time. His tone was a warning. You better not, she retorted. Reaching up, Lissa cupped her breasts through her bra, kneading them, her thumbs and forefingers pinching her erect nipples. Tease, he growled, his eyes half-lidded with lust. Look who's talking, Mr. Get Her Hot and Leave. A smile tugged at the corner of his beautifully sculpted lips. She traced their shape with a fingertip, admiring their perfection. As her mind filled with images of what she wanted him to do with that mouth, a sharp flare of awareness spread across her skin, making her sweat. I'll do all of that, he murmured, cupping her bare buttocks in his hands and squeezing. And so much more. Not fair that you can read my mind, but I can't read yours. You'll enjoy it better if I show you what I'm thinking. His voice was pure sin and sex. Restless and achy, she wiggled deeper into his touch. How much time do we have? Not enough. Aiden rolled and lay beside her, one hand supporting his head, the other running along her side. She laughed and pushed his hands away. You're ticklish. This time his smile broke free and transformed his features. Amazed, she touched his face because she couldn't bear not to. Christ, you're gorgeous. The smile faded, and she remembered what she saw was not who he was. He was an alien. A sudden chill moved through her, making her shiver. Noting her discomfort, Aiden pulled her closer, sharing his warmth, and then she didn't care about the fact that they came from different dimensions. It doesn't matter, Aiden. Lissa parted her lips in blatant invitation for a kiss, which he obliged with a tempered hunger that made her whimper and grow damp between her thighs. You could look like a troll and have antennae, she gasped when he allowed her to breathe, and I'd still want you. Why? His arched brow refuted her claim. Because of the way you hold me, and the way you make me feel. Tossing her leg over his hip, Lissa pushed him to his back and came over him again. You really don't have antennae, right? He grinned, and her heart stopped. Right. Guardians are very similar to humans. She licked the tip of his nose, then his lips, then his nipple, which hardened beneath her tongue. I wanted you when it was dark in here, she whispered, just as much as I want you now. Sliding lower, she followed the happy trail of silky hair down the rippling muscles of his abdomen. He tensed and arched into her mouth, his hips thrusting in demand, making her feel every silken inch of hard cock between her breasts. Want me to go lower? She asked, knowing damn well he did. I want you to make love to me, in whatever way you want. Make love to me. Startled at his choice of words, she looked up the length of his torso to meet his gaze. Seeing the austere vulnerability in his handsome features, Lissa's eyes burned with tears, making his visage blurry. Suddenly their intimacy felt intensely, hauntingly personal. It would kill her when he left. She didn't know how she would bear it. But he was worth it. Where he was concerned, she'd take what she could get and be glad of it. I've come to realize that I feel the same, he murmured in that deep rumble she loved. Aiden looked up at the blonde beauty who lay atop him and was content for the first time in centuries. He felt the depth of Lissa's affection in every glance, every touch, every word she spoke, and he hungered for it, needed it. Hurry, she said urgently, as impatient as he was to be connected in every way possible. He reversed their positions and ripped away the tiny scrap of lace that held her thong to her hip. Taking her mouth with fervent intensity, He reached between her legs and found her slick and hot. His cock jerked in eagerness to be inside her, to be one with her so that nothing could keep them apart. With reverent fingers he parted her, finding her clit and stroking it with cream-coated fingers, coaxing it from its hood. She moaned into his kiss, her legs falling open, her body undulating in rhythm with his touch. Leaning his weight on one arm, Aiden settled his hips between hers, his fingers leaving her swollen sex to take his cock in hand. He used the head of his dick to tease her, to arouse her, rubbing it through the liquid evidence of her desire. All the while his tongue fucked her mouth in a deliberate imitation of what was to come, what he longed for more than his next breath. And he wasn't alone in his rampant hunger. Lissa gave as good as she got. His thoughts were filled with the lewd and lascivious dialogue she was having in her mind, cravings so raw they drenched his skin with sweat. He'd discovered that facet of her sexual desire the first time they made love. Lissa thought of sex and language so carnal, his balls drew up, aching to be emptied inside her. Her hands clenched and unclenched convulsively at his sides. He snatched one of her wrists and made her grip his cock. Tearing his mouth from hers, he bit her earlobe and growled, "Feel how hard you make me. I'd have to ride you for days to get my fill. Non-stop, deep, hard fucking." Lissa's chest heaved with labored breaths, and her skin became as hot as his, then hotter, so that it burned him. She was his oasis, his angel, but when it came to sex with him, she liked it just the way he did, no holds barred. No barriers, just pure, raw carnality binding them together. "And you're so tiny," he taunted, feeling her desire swell as mental images acted out the words he spoke. "Your cunt so deliciously tight. I can't wait to feel that again, the way your pussy grips my cock as I work it into you." She turned her head and bit his neck with no gentleness, just before she lifted her hips and sucked the pulsing head of his dick just barely inside. "Start working then, tough guy," she challenged, breathless. Aiden shuddered violently as her drenched, hungry pussy closed tight as a fist around him. The control he'd felt just a moment ago fled, replaced by unadulterated lust. He gritted his teeth and began to pump his hips slowly, feeling her soft as velvet walls struggle to expand and take his cock. Her head fell back and she moaned, "Oh God, you feel amazing." He wanted to reply but couldn't speak. So many women, so many years. None of them had ever taken him. His duty was to fill in dreams about other men. He was never himself, only a phantasm of someone else. Even when he'd lain with other guardians, it wasn't Aiden they wanted, but Captain Cross, the legend, not the man. No one knew how he'd come to hate that disconnection, how empty his life seemed to him now, how satisfaction with a job well done eluded him, because it was never done. It was endless. "I wanted you when it was dark in here," Lissa had said. He believed her. She was the only one who knew him. She was the only lover who wanted him, the woman who used adoring fingertips to stroke his skin, who shifted her hips to make him more comfortable, who whispered her encouragement with no shame or insecurity. "Yes," she breathed. "Give it to me." He swiveled his hips and worked his cock deeper into her, his entire frame tensed against the pleasure that threatened to unman him. All the agony of the last 2 weeks fell away, the hard knots in his shoulders and back loosening from the sensual heat. There was only this moment, the moment when he sank balls deep into a juicy cunt that belonged to a woman he admired and longed for, a woman who made him smile and touched him with such reverence. Gratitude and affection closed his throat. Feeling the shaking of Aiden's arms, Lissa stared up into his flushed face and felt tears well. Deep inside her he pulsed. Every beat of his heart echoed in the throbbing of the hard flesh that filled her. "I've missed you," she admitted, needing him to know that he was important to her. His jaw tightened, and he nodded. She knew he had missed her too, not just because he was here again, but because she felt it radiating from him. His need and longing were tangible. "Give me the top," she murmured, gripping his shoulders as he complied. For a moment she stared, taking the time to absorb the feel of him beneath her and inside her. It was because of him she couldn't move forward with Chad. Chad couldn't make her feel like this. Chad wasn't the voice that had found her in the darkness, or the strong arms that held her in sleep, or the quiet strength that made her feel safe. Aiden was her anchor. "You were right," she said softly, lifting onto her knees, her eyelids growing heavy at the feel of his cock caressing her as it withdrew. "About what?" His large body shuddered as she lowered again. "About making love." Her hands stroked over the tops of his shoulders. "Lissa." He laced his fingers with hers, supporting her as she began to ride him with greater urgency. She whimpered in pleasure. "That's it," he crooned, watching her with intense blue eyes. "Take me any way you want." Sweat beaded on his forehead as she began a steady rhythm of lifting and falling, stroking the thick length of his cock with the adoring clasp of her body. He was too big for her, his hips spreading her thighs wide enough that the lips of her cunt kissed the root of his erection with every deep lunge. A moan escaped, and then another, as she struggled to rub the spot inside that ached for him. I can't." Knowing what she needed, Aiden took over, releasing her hands to hold her hips as he pumped upward in steady drives. It was perfect, the way he moved, the variations in the depths of his thrusts, the circling of his hips. She could barely breathe, barely think, her body helplessly lost to his skill. Leaning forward on all fours, she let him have his way, let him kill her with feeling and sensation, let him take her where he would. The sound of his luscious voice, husky with lust and purring heated sex words, made her cunt flutter along his cock, then clutch tightly in orgasm. "Oh, God!" The cry that left her throat was not her own. She didn't know where it came from. It poured up from the same place as her pleasure, from deep within. "Sweet Lissa," he growled, his mouth to her ear as her arms collapsed, leaving her hips suspended by his strength alone. Now he took what he needed, using her body to satisfy his own, his face buried between her breasts, wallowing in her scent as he drove upward into her spasming depths with long, deep plunges. His entire frame convulsed when he came. The words he groaned were in some ancient language she couldn't understand, except for her name. She heard it, heard the possessiveness in it, and she held him, rocked him, soothed him, as he emptied himself inside her in hot, pulsing streams, giving her all that he was, all that she wanted to keep, but would be forced to lose when the night was over. Aiden held Lissa's damp body tightly to his, hearing the rasping of his own labored breathing, feeling her raging heartbeat against his chest. Around them, the soft summer breeze blew, cooling their burning skin. How long had it been since sex had truly satisfied him? He couldn't remember. He knew only that it had never left him feeling like this. "Aiden," she breathed in her soft, innocent voice, a sound filled with wonder and satiety. She sighed and attempted to move off him. Unwilling to be separated, he turned carefully, keeping his cock buried deep inside her. Side by side they faced each other. He lifted a hand to brush the damp hair from her face, then pressed a kiss to her forehead, one of gratitude and joy. This morning death had been almost welcome, Exhausted and disheartened, the flow of shadows from the gateway endless, he'd wondered why he should keep fighting. What good did it do? Now it seemed so simple. His battle kept Lissa safe, kept her alive and well. That was enough reason to go on. It was then that the rustling sounds of papers in her drawing pad caught his attention. He reached over her, his intent to tuck it beneath the blanket, when a soft gust of wind flipped the page. His heart stopped at what he saw, his chest tightening in the vice-like grip of pure fear. Everything faded away, even Lissa, as he stared at her drawings with horror, such as he'd never known. Nightmares, the gateway, endless years of death and war. None had struck terror in him like the sight of his own face staring back at him. "Lissa." His voice was low and gravelly, forcing him to clear his throat before he could go on. "Have you shown these to anyone else?" "What?" She nuzzled into his throat, her lips brushing against his skin. Golden hair flowed across the arm he used to hold her close, hair that smelled of flowers and hard sex, a potent combination that stirred him deep inside. "These pictures, have you shared them with other guardians?" "No." She pulled back, her dark eyes capped with a frown. "Why?" "We must destroy them." His hands shook. "What can I do?" "Why?" She lifted her head to look at the image with a soft, adoring smile. "I told you the lighting was bad. I couldn't make out your eye color in the candlelight. Your irises are such a deep blue, they looked dark. And your hair, the silver is so faint." She glanced at him. "But I like it. In fact, it turns me on." He inhaled sharply. All this time it had been his appearance she enjoyed so much. Even as masculine satisfaction spread warmth through his veins, the ramifications of her unique cognizance spread goosebumps across his skin. She winced. "Am I that far off from how you really look? I'm sorry. We'll tear them up and throw them away." Everything he knew, all the work of his friends and the elders, all his training, for one thing. To kill the key. A prophecy whose traits Lissa displayed in abundance. She controlled the dream. She called him by name. She could see him. It was the last that was the most damning. That she could see into the twilight. It was rare enough to find those dreamers who recognized that they were dreaming and took control of the events. Never had they found a dreamer who could see clearly into their world and comprehended that they were interacting with a real being. If the elders learned of her abilities, they would kill her. Aiden himself didn't know what to make of the revelation. But he'd think about it later. Right now he needed to find a way to keep Lissa safe. Every time she fell asleep, she was in danger. Time was running out. If the elders didn't know what she was capable of yet, they soon would. "When the guardians come to you, do they ask you to describe them, to draw them, anything like that?" "Yes, weirdos." She wrinkled her nose. "I told them this isn't a dog show. I'm not jumping hoops." Aiden hugged her tightly to him. He couldn't do a damn thing for her in the twilight. By the time sleep brought her here, she was vulnerable. He had to protect her before she arrived, before she fell asleep. What the hell am I going to do? If only there were more guardians who harbored the same doubts he did, he could ask for their help. If enough of them approached the elders as one voice, perhaps they would be heard. But if there were others like him, they guarded their thoughts as zealously as he had. As far as he knew, he was the only one to question the wisdom of the elders. She could lock herself in again. But who knew how long it would take him to build support? She had been on the verge of losing her mind when he found her, a recollection that led him to a darker thought. Perhaps she hadn't been hiding from the nightmares. Perhaps all this time she had been hiding from him, from his kind. She'd been a child when she first erected the door. With her ability to see into the twilight, She might have been frightened of the guardians who came to see her. What the fuck was he going to do? He couldn't take on both the guardians and the nightmares alone. If he couldn't alter the elders' reasoning, there would be only one recourse. He would have to leave the twilight. He would have to protect Lissa from the outside. There had to be a way to journey into her world. The elders had created the fissure and abbreviated space that led them to this conduit. Surely they could do it again. He was about to find out. Despite the certainty he felt in his decision, he was aware of the ramifications. In addition to all the inherent risks, it would be only a temporary measure, a desperate tactic to buy Lissa some time until he could figure out what to do. Figure out a way to convince the elders of their grave error. "You're thinking so hard, I can hear your brain ticking," she said dryly, nipping at his jaw with her teeth. "Are you really upset about my pictures? I'm sorry, Lissa, no." He cupped the back of her head and pressed a hard kiss to her forehead. "Don't be sorry. The drawings are wonderful. I'm flattered." "Then, what's wrong?" "Everything, except you." He met her frown with earnest intensity. "When I leave, you're going to lock the door behind me, and you're not going to let anyone in. Not even me." "Huh?" His tone lowered, became more urgent. Even now his skin crawled with the realization that guardians were out there, hunting her with precision. "They'll come. They'll try to trick you into thinking it's me at the door. But it won't be." "Aiden, you're scaring me." Her embrace tightened, saying without words that she trusted him to protect her. He would die trying. For him, the legend of the key was in doubt, but it was woven into the very tapestry of their lives. Guardians risked their lives in pursuit of the key. There was no alternative to them or the elders. The key must be destroyed, no questions asked. By joining Lissa, he too would be hunted. "Promise me you won't open the door to anyone." "All right, I promise." She chewed her lower lip, her eyes shiny with unspent tears. "You're telling me I won't see you again, aren't you?" "You'll see me again, hot stuff." He caught her face in his hands and kissed her with all the hunger she aroused in him. "But you won't know who I am." Chapter 5. For an age now, the simulated lightning of the sky had filled Aiden with relief. It meant his shift was over. Another day had passed. He could travel up the hill to his home and try to forget that the endless days before him would be just like the last. But today, the incremental passing of time set his heart pumping in unsteady measure. He paced his covered porch like a caged animal. Tick-tock, tick-tock, like the clocks he had seen in the remembrances of dreamers. In a matter of hours, Lissa would fall asleep again, and someone would be sent to her. When she denied them entry, it would force the collective hand of the elders, and they would go after her en masse. He had to find a portal between his world and Lissa's, and he had to find it now. The possible risks were no deterrent. Aiden was decided. There were no options, no choices. If he didn't go, Lissa would die. Where to begin? Aiden's curiosity had led to months of researching data in the Hall of Knowledge, and he'd found only vague references to Fisher creation in a few of them. Aiden didn't have months. "You've got that look on your face," muttered a voice behind him. Glancing aside, Aiden found Connor ascending the short steps to the porch. "I think I've found what some might consider to be the key." Connor reached the deck and shook off the dewy blades of grass that clung to his robe's hem. "I thought you said the key doesn't exist." "She doesn't." Aiden shook his head. "It doesn't. Or if it does, it sure as hell isn't Lissa." "Okay." "Lissa can see me," Aiden explained. Connor's eyes narrowed. "You're certain?" She drew a picture of me." The low whistle that rent the still morning was filled with things that did not need to be said aloud. Surprise, worry, and a heavy dose of chastisement. "I hope you're planning to step back and let the elders take over. You should leave this task to someone else." Aiden paused mid-step, his robes falling to rest around his ankles. "She is not going to die." "Cross," Connor warned in a low tone. "Stop thinking with your dick." "You know she's not the key," Aiden growled. "There's no way in hell Lissa would open the gateway. No way for her to even get there. Why should she die to perpetrate a myth?" "Can you say with absolute certainty that it's a myth?" Connor ran his hand over his jaw. "You thought we'd never find a person with the traits, so of course it was all bullshit. But now you have found someone. If she's real, maybe the prophecy is too. Are you willing to risk everything and everyone we know for a piece of ass?" Clenching his fists, Aiden stared at his friend and felt the true weight of his convictions settle on his shoulders. If he didn't have Connor's support, he was completely on his own. "She's not just a piece of ass. Say that again and see what happens." "Oh, man!" Connor flinched and shook his head. "You've never given any other woman a chance. This is the first time you've spent more than a few hours with one. Trust me, they're all great. If you want a steady fuck, any one of the single guardians would volunteer. Shit, most of the partnered ones would too." "I'm sick of fucking." Connor stilled, staring at him in obvious stupefaction. "Who are you? And what have you done with my best friend?" Aiden's laugh was harsh. "You know me, Bruce. Would I put anyone at risk without a damn good reason? Men aren't the same when they're pussy-whipped. You know that. You've seen it." Walking to the end of the porch, Aiden set his hands on the wooden rail and watched as the sky grew lighter. Tick-tock. He hadn't yet bathed, and the scent of hard sex clung to his skin. It riled everything primitive within him, while thrusting home how unique Lissa's appeal to him was. Their time together was not something to be washed away and forgotten. "Look around," Aiden said, his gaze moving over the rolling mountain view. "None of this is real. It's all an illusion to keep us sane in this conduit." "And you think what you have with this dreamer is real?" Connor snorted. "It's a dream, Cross. It's all in your head. You've never touched her, kissed her, fucked her. You're living in two different worlds. This, at least, is filled with people you know are real." How could he explain? How could he put into words how Lissa's dream touch was so much more alive to him than another guardian's? "She's a veterinarian." Aiden faced his friend. "She has a way with animals and wounded souls. She loves pasta, especially when it's served with cream sauce and sun-dried tomatoes. She drives too fast and gets a lot of tickets, but she doesn't mind. You only live once. That's her motto. She loves the beach and margaritas and looks sexy as hell in a bikini. She's dating a guy named Chad, and she likes him, but it's me she wants." The last made him smile. Connor sank to sit on the top step and dropped his blonde head in his hands. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's not just a dreamer. She's real. And when I'm with her, I feel real." Blowing out a frustrated breath, Connor asked, "What will you do? It's not as if you can pull her from her slipstream and hide her." Aiden rested his hip against the rail and crossed his arms. "I have to keep Lissa from entering the twilight." "How the fuck?" Scowling, Connor shot to his feet. No way in hell. You don't even know how the elders created the fissure the first time. They know. It's not as if I have a choice. I don't have enough time to do anything productive here. On the outside, I can..." "You can what? The answers you need are in here, not out there." "Yes," Aiden said quietly. "That's true." Connor's eyes widened. You want to drag me into this? I'm not asking you for anything, except your discretion. But if you're feeling altruistic and decide to help me, I won't refuse. Cut the crap. Connor shot him a scathing, sidelong glance. I've always been your second. Damned if I'll stop now. Then it would be my fuck-up instead of yours. And this, my friend, is all you. Aidan's mouth curved with a grateful smile. Descending the 3 short steps to the front lawn, Connor began prowling in obvious frustration. He moved with a warrior's grace, despite his massive size, the weight of which compressed the grass beneath his feet and left a trail in his wake. What do you need me to do? After I leave, find a way into the Temple of the Elders and access the database. See if you can find a way to bring me back. I've got an idea that will allow me to work on this while I'm gone. But you're right. Most of what I'll need will be here. What's your plan for how you're going to reach your dreamer? It's a poor plan, but it's the only one I've got. Are you going to tell me what it is? Well, I imagine I'll just grab an elder and hold him hostage until he tells me what I need to do. Connor jerked to a halt and gaped. That's your plan? Man, she really fucked your brains out. Got a better idea, smartass? No. Connor kicked at the grass. But it's a stupid plan. You'll have no idea if the elders know what you're after, or not. Well, Aidan shrugged. I'm about to find out. Dressed for battle in loose trousers and tunic, Aidan slipped into the Temple of the Elders on silent feet. He moved within the shadows, ever conscious of the vids that recorded every visitor. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, his heart slow and sure. He'd watched as the majority of elders had departed, leaving behind the lone sentinel whose day it was to remain in secluded meditation. The single guard at the door was easily distracted by suspicious noises created by Connor, and Aidan slipped behind him and entered the cool, dark hide-in. Tick-tock. In the deathly silence of the stone edifice, the relentless dwindling of time was inescapable. Aidan traversed the long hallway that led to the Honden, a separate part of the temple complex he doubted had ever felt the feet of a guardian. The floor beneath him began to waver, growing translucent, revealing a swirling kaleidoscope of colors. The part of him that questioned and researched everything wanted to linger and look, but his heart urged him forward. He paused a moment, on the threshold of an arched entryway, the hairs on his neck rising with acute awareness. The warning was clear, and he'd never doubted his instincts. When he leaped into the round room, he was prepared for the glaive that thrust toward him, knocking it aside with a perfectly aimed parry. He had only a split second to note the walls lined with bound volumes and a large console that dominated the center of the vast space before the gray-robed figure lunged at him again. "You trespass, Captain," hissed the voice from the shadowed depths of the cowl. Lunging forward, wide sleeves falling back to reveal pale but brawny arms, the elder fought with surprising ferocity, which did not deter Aidan at all. Focused and determined, he was coldly calculated. He had no idea what fueled the elder, but he was fueled by desperation. Since failure was not an option, he had nothing to lose. Forward and back, spinning and arching away from gleaming glaives in a macabre dance, neither took the advantage. Aidan wondered at this, his chest heaving only slightly from his exertions, his body too fit to feel even a hint of fatigue. He needed the elder alive, but the elder had no discernible reason for returning the favor. Soon the elder, though skilled, began to tire. He was simply no match for an opponent who held a blade most hours and days of his life. He tripped on the hem of his robe and fell backward. As his arms flailed, his glaive flew from his hand and went skidding across the stone. Fighting for balance, he slapped his hand palm down on the surface of the center console, setting it ablaze in flashing lights. Aiden froze in mid-swing as he saw the face revealed when the gray hood was dislodged. "Master Sharon," he breathed, his sword arm falling. Then he quickly raised it again, pressing the deadly point against the elder's rapidly pumping carotid when he reached for the touchpad. "Don't." "You must let me." "No." Aiden studied his old teacher with wide eyes. Pale skin, pure white hair, and pupils so wide and dark they swallowed the whites of his eyes, altogether made the mentor he'd known look like a corpse of the vital man he once was. "If you don't allow me to fix what I've done," Sharon rasped, "we will all die, including your precious dreamer." Aiden stilled, his gaze narrowing as the low rumble of sound permeated the soles of his feet and spread upward through his bones. "What the hell?" "If you let me proceed," Sharon lifted his chin in silent challenge, "I will tell you what you came here to learn." Growling out a low breath, and knowing he didn't have time to argue, Aiden nodded and stepped back, withdrawing his blade. The elder immediately spun about and worked furiously at the console, eventually entering a combination of keystrokes that turned the flashing lights solid, then blue, and finally off. Resting his palms on the edge, Sharon visibly collapsed with relief. "You don't have much time." "Time for what?" "Time to make it to the lake before your absence is noted." "Explain," Aiden ordered curtly. "You want to cross over." Sharon reached back and lifted his hood, once again hiding behind the veil of shadows. "Your increasing dissatisfaction has been obvious to us for the last few decades, and your infatuation with the dreamer has been whispered about for weeks. Your actions today can mean only one thing. You want to be with her rather than do your duty here." Lifting his arm, Aiden slipped his glaive into the scabbard that crossed his back. He released a deep breath, wondering if Sharon suspected the true reason he wished to leave. Without the benefit of reading the elder's facial expressions, there was no way for him to know. The toneless, emotionless voice revealed nothing. "What do I have to do?" "Search your conscience. You are our best warrior. Your loss will change the balance between guardians and nightmares considerably. Morale will plummet. A selfish choice, wouldn't you say?" "Fuck you." Aiden crossed his arms. "I have given more than enough. I refuse to feel guilt for wanting something for myself. You hold no hesitation in sucking me dry, yet I'm selfish." The quick rise and fall of Sharon's chest was the only sign that he'd struck a chord. "You will have to travel past the gateway," the elder rasped. "Beyond the rise you'll find a lake." "Yes, I've seen it." Aiden felt his mentor's smile. "Why am I not surprised? You were always overly curious." "Go on. I don't have time to reminisce." "When you get to the lake, dive beneath the surface. You'll see light emanating from a cave. There is a grotto there, tended by 2 elders." "What are they doing down there?" Sharon held out both hands, palms parallel. "In the space between waking and dreaming, there is the place where some humans come by force. They hover here, more awake than asleep, but not cognizant enough to comprehend. Once we thought the key would come to us this way. Now we simply guard them from coming too far into this conduit. Nightmares are predators. They would use that tenuous tie if they could." Aiden frowned, and then his eyes widened. "Hypnosis?" "Yes." Sharon nodded his approval. "That is what the dreamers call it." "Is that how we entered here, to begin with?" "No." Something in the elder's tone gave him pause. "There is more than one way to make the journey?" "There is only one way that will allow a lone guardian to make the journey," came the evasive reply. "How can I trust you to tell me the truth?" "How can I trust you not to kill me now that you know?" There had been occasions when he'd had to act based on faulty or suspect intel, but Aiden never liked it. This time, he hated it. If he was sent in the wrong direction. He caught the elder by the elbow. "You're coming with me." "You can't." "Yes, I can." He dragged him out of the room and down the hall, making a quick stop at the private elder library. "What are you doing?" Sharon snapped, when Aiden went straight to the historical volumes that were omitted from the entirely electronic public hall of knowledge. "Taking answers with me." His fingertips drifted over the spines until he reached the spot where he should have found the text chronicling the 2 years preceding and directly following their discovery of this conduit. "Where is it?" "It was lost." "Bullshit." "It is lost to me," Sharon said dryly. "I have no idea where it is." Aiden reached up, gripped the hilt of his sword, and withdrew it with quiet deliberation. "I need you alive, but I don't need you healthy. You throw aside centuries of living with guardians who admire and respect you for a few hours spent with a dreamer? You allowed my discontent to fester with your secrets?" Aiden pressed the tip of his blade into Sharon's chest. "Now tell me, Master, where did the elders hide the volume I seek?" "Never. You may have abandoned your people, but I will not." "As you wish." Aiden grabbed Sharon and dragged him out into the hall and back toward the control room. "What are you doing?" "We're going to bang on the console a bit. Get those lights flashing and alarms ringing. Then we'll head toward the lake." "You cannot do that." Sharon began to struggle, his eyes wide. "You will destroy everything." "Hey, you're the one who said I abandoned my people. What do I care if you all blow up like a supernova or whatever the hell it is that's going to happen? I'll be on Earth with my dreamer." "Damn you!" Aiden's brows rose. "What'll it be?" Sharon inhaled harshly. Then he gestured back at the library with an impatient jerk of his hand. Once returned to the vast room, the elder moved to a case of ancient medical texts and withdrew several, exposing a small door behind them, which, when opened, revealed the volume Aiden sought. Collecting it from Sharon's outstretched hand, Aiden slipped it into the pouch strapped to his thigh and sealed it. "Right, let's go." Together they walked out to the hide-in, where he sent out a low whistle that rose and fell in deliberate rhythm. A moment later, the same sound was returned to him. Connor would follow at a discreet distance. "There are more than one of you," Sharon said flatly. "Nope, just me." Aiden reached the outer courtyard and leaped into the upper twilight, pulling the struggling Sharon behind him. Gliding rapidly through the mist, he put every ounce of power he had into achieving the fastest possible speed. The sky was beginning to darken when they reached the lake. Aiden dived straight down into the icy water that didn't heat even though he wished it to. Beside him, Sharon stilled, allowing them to slice through like a blade. It took a moment to find the grotto, and then they emerged, gasping. Aiden's first impression was of moss-covered black rock, but a closer inspection showed there was no subterfuge here. As he crawled up over a shallow ledge, he pulled Sharon out of the water after him, his gaze moving swiftly over the circular console manned by one very startled elder in training. At a nearby desk, another trainee leaped to his feet. Above their heads, scenes flashed like movies, glimpses into the open minds of thousands of hypnotized people. He stood, his hostage dripping, and moved to the other men with rapid, near-running strides. Aiden shoved Sharon into the man at the desk, effectively knocking them out of the way, freeing his arm to swing forward with punishing force. The sickening crack of his fist to the jaw of the trainee at the console was loud and echoed, causing the other to cry out and lunge at him. A quick crouch and upward thrust of his body threw the man back and into the rock wall, where he was rendered as unconscious as his partner. Rolling his shoulders, Aiden straightened his tunic and caught Sharon with a steely glare. "Get to work." Unfazed, the elder moved to the console and sat in a metallic swiveling chair that was anchored to the stone floor. "We have to catch a medium when they are at their deepest state. You will attach yourself to their subconscious and ride the slipstream into their plane of existence. Once there, the temporal disturbance created by your appearance should cause a hiccup in time, a brief pause that will allow you to leave the area undetected. That is the theory, anyway. The theory? Aiden arched a brow. That's the best you can do. It is not as if I have done it myself, Sharon pointed out. Nodding grimly, Aiden asked, Is there any way to choose a medium who's near to her? If he arrived on the other side of her world, it could be days before he reached her. He would not get to her before she fell asleep again. The thought of Lissa dealing with the banging at the door and sinister-minded cajoling infuriated him and aroused possessive feelings he never knew he was capable of. Where is your lauded patience, Captain? Running out, Aiden warned. Sharon shook his head in silent chastisement. Lucky for you, the dreamer you want lives in an area of eccentrics. There is a high concentration of mediums in California. Understand, once you go, there is no known way to return. Quit talking and do it. Aiden began to pace, his hands clasped at his lower back, his gaze wandering. Scattered across the nearby desktop were loose-leaf papers and open-faced books. He was about to turn away when an odd glare caught his eye. Wedged beneath the corner was a slim volume boasting a jeweled cover that betrayed its position. A quick glance at Sharon showed the elder occupied and unaware. Summoning the book, Aiden flipped through it silently, recognizing the handwritten language of the ancients. He was rusty, but was able to make out enough words to know the book was one he wanted to take with him. One page in particular gave him pause, the reference to pausing abbreviated space, one of vast interest. Collecting a makeshift bookmark from the desk, Aiden saved the page and slipped the volume into his waistband where his tunic could hide it from view. Here, Sharon murmured. You can catch this stream. He swiveled and set both hands on his knees, with his cowl thrown back and his white hair wet and sticking out in all directions. He was an odd sight, but his facial features were familiar, despite their lack of coloring. The sight of them reminded Aiden of the time when they had been mentor and student, and he had been an idealistic youth with great hope for the future. That boy could never have foreseen this event. I beg you to reconsider, Captain. You are not the first guardian to grow an unnatural attachment to a dreamer. It can be resolved with time. For a moment Aiden paused, giving his heart and mind a last chance to object. In the end, he knew he was making the right decision. He hoped he had in his possession the secrets he'd been searching for. Either he would discover that the elders were correct, and he could resume his fight with renewed determination, or he would find out they weren't, in which case he could enlighten the others. He would be helping his people, however he looked at it. He wanted to believe in the elders, he truly did, but Aiden saw no reason for them to hide information that wasn't incriminating in some way. And then there was Lissa, a sweet, wonderful woman who didn't deserve to be dragged into this struggle. A woman who had already suffered a lifetime of sickness and discomfort because of her dreams. But what would he find in her plane? A world he knew only from dreams, and a lover who would not remember him. But the possibilities, the chance to be with Lissa and explore the tentative bond they shared, to touch her, kiss her, make love to her for real, skin to skin. The thought was an oasis in an endless existence that had long been barren as the desert. You do not have to do something so drastic, Sharon said in a low, urgent tone. Yes, Aiden said with a wry smile. I do. Sharon watched Captain Cross move beyond the console to the various slipstreams that formed pillars of lights connecting the floor to the cavern roof. Without hesitation, Cross stepped into the stream he'd been directed to and vanished, gliding into the semi-dream state of the chosen medium with an expertise born of eons of practice. When Sharon was alone, he entered a series of keystrokes and reported, Cross is gone. You did well, Sharon, echoed the collective voice of the other elders. Perfectly executed. Tilting his head in acknowledgement of the praise, He moved to assist the fallen trainees. As he lowered to a crouch, his gaze moved to the nearby desk. He took the book. The feeling of satisfaction was tangible. Excellent. He kept the knowledge about the other volume to himself. Chapter 6. Aidan pushed himself up from the coarse carpet where he sprawled, groaning in pain. Every part of his body ached something fierce, even the roots of his hair. As he lifted his head, his gaze searched the room, taking in the pale yellow walls and the two people who sat just a few feet away. They were frozen in place, trapped in a single moment of time. There was a portly man with one ankle resting on the opposite knee and a notepad in his lap, and another, lying on a chaise, eyes closed, his stream of consciousness the vehicle Aidan had used to arrive. Wincing with every movement, Aidan couldn't remember ever feeling this dreadful in his life. Lurching to his feet, he reached out and caught the edge of a nearby desk, sucking in deep breaths as the small room spun violently. A slow, soft click sounded loudly in the room. Aidan looked at the clock on the wall, understanding that 1 second had passed since he'd arrived. Time was beginning to recover, which meant he didn't have long. He knew a guy with a sword wasn't going to go over well here. Shoving his physical discomfort aside, he moved to the nearby closet, which was distinguished by its smaller door compared to the two that flanked it. Inside, he found several garments covered in dry cleaning bags. A quick glance over his shoulder confirmed that the hypnotist was about the same height, but while the man, at rough guess, weighed similarly, his body was mostly fat. Still, the extra-large clothes looked as if they might fit, so Aidan grabbed a pale blue shirt, dark blue pants, and belt, then quickly left the room. In the reception area, a young woman was paused in the process of stuffing envelopes. Looking over her shoulder, Aidan noted the return address, San Diego, California, and smiled. Sharon had done remarkably well considering how short a time the elder had been given. Reaching beneath the desk, Aidan caught up the burgundy leather purse there and rifled through it, withdrawing $100 worth of various denomination bills and a set of car keys. He wrote a simple "thank you" on a piece of paper, slipped it into her wallet, and set the bag back where he'd found it. Outside the office, in the nondescript hallway that led to the elevators, Aidan found a restroom where he changed clothes. The overly large pants necessitated some alteration of the belt to secure them around his lean hips, but this took only a moment, and he was quickly on the move. He kept everything with him, refusing to be in a strange world without his accoutrement of battle. The subsequent long trip down the stairs in his weakened state nearly did him in. He stopped often, holding the rail and gasping, while willing his uncooperative body to function properly. Tick-tock. Time was still passing for him, despite what the clocks said, and he needed to reach Lissa before nightfall. By the time Aidan reached the lobby, time was advancing full speed ahead. The elevators were once again functional, and humans scurried industriously through the foyer that led to the outside. He wondered if anyone would stop him and question the scabbard he held at his side, but aside from blatantly appreciative female glances, no one paid any attention to his glaive. Clinging to the weapon with white-knuckled force, Aidan longed for the comfort the feel of the hilt normally imparted. While he wasn't afraid, he felt very much alone. Lissa. He was assaulted by a variety of smells, some pleasant, some not. In dreams, this plethora of sensory input was muted or overlooked. Not so in actuality. The sounds of this world were many, a cacophony of voices and machinery that increased his nausea. He stumbled out the front glass doors with a desperate need for circulating air. Using trial and error in tandem with the alarm remote on the keychain, Aidan located the early model white Toyota Corolla, the interior of which smelled like something stale and burnt. Once he realized the hideous odor came from the ashtray, Aidan tossed the entire thing out the window. He'd shared post-coital cigarettes in dreams, but never had the true rankness of the habit been revealed to him. Altogether, his first impression of the new world was not a positive one, which only made him long for Lissa with a biting hunger. A torn map, endless one-way streets, and drivers who couldn't stay in their lanes made getting to the freeway beyond frustrating, but Aiden was determined, and he used every bit of memory dreamers had given him over the years to get on his way, toward the woman of his dreams. "That sounds wonderful, Chad," Lissa murmured into the phone while absently drawing doodles on her puppy-shaped notepad. "Really, but I'm not up for it tonight. I'm wiped out." Glancing up at the clock on the kitchen wall, she noted the time, 6 o'clock. "Okay, forget the movie. I'll cook." Sighing, Lissa rolled her tense shoulders and dropped the pencil to rub the back of her neck. "Dinner sounds great, it really does, but it's been such a long day and—" The ring of the doorbell interrupted her. "You work too hard, babe," Chad chastised softly. "You need to learn to say, 'Come back tomorrow. I got a man who wants to be with me.'" She smiled. He was so patient with her, never pushing her to give more than she was ready for. There were a couple times she had been really close to inviting him to spend the night, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Had she now developed a fear of intimacy? Did the certainty that she wouldn't live to a ripe old age make her wary and standoffish? "The mailman's at the door." Sliding off the stool at her breakfast bar, Lissa stretched weary muscles. She was going to let Chad get close to her, no matter what. "Tomorrow's Friday. Want to take a rain check for Saturday?" Chad's frustrated exhale sounded across the lines that connected them. "Yes, Saturday, for sure." "For sure, I promise. See you then." She set the receiver back into the cradle and crossed her small living room to the front door. Jellybean fell into step beside her while rumbling a low warning. "Kick back, Attack Cat," Lissa scolded, knowing that JB would ignore her and hiss with his usual grumpy fervor. The bell buzzed again, and she jogged the last couple of steps. "I'm coming!" Lissa turned the knob and pulled the door open. "Do you need me to sign or something?" Her voice stuttered into silence as her gaze lifted and met eyes of deeply intense sapphire brilliance. Well over 6 feet of pure, unadulterated, gorgeous male stood on her porch step. She gaped. He was so tall, so broad of shoulder, so overwhelming that he filled every inch of her doorway. The scent of his skin, something exotic and spicy and scrumptious, hit her at the same moment as the wickedly provocative curving of his sensual lips. JB's grumbling came to an abrupt halt. "Holy shit!" Her hand clutched the doorknob with white-knuckled strength. She had to force herself to breathe, in and out. His gaze slid along the length of her body as a hot, tangible caress. Her knees went weak. She stumbled, and he stepped into her personal space, catching her elbow and anchoring her upright. "Lissa." She blinked, the shock of that low-timbered voice with its soft brogue flaring across her skin. She'd heard that voice before, had heard her name spoken by it, and the heated awareness of his touch was near painful in its acuteness. The man on her doorstep was delicious, impossibly so. Dark hair with silver-streaked temples, winged brows over eyes that devoured her, a firm jaw, and masterfully etched lips. A pale blue dress shirt was parted at the neck, revealing a light dusting of hair on a bronzed chest, and an opal-like stone hanging from a silver chain. Strong arms were revealed by rolled-up cuffs, arms that pulled her closer to that mesmerizing, erotically charged stare. I'd kissed him before. No, she shook her head. She hadn't. There was no way she could forget a man who looked as he did. He was almost otherworldly handsome, a man who was too hard, too chiseled, too dangerously male to be truly beautiful, but he was damn close. Swallowing hard, she parted her lips to speak. Instead, he bent his head and took her mouth. Her legs gave out beneath her, causing her to sink a few inches before he caught her close and lifted her feet from the tiled entryway. A deep, hungry growl rumbled up from the man's chest, vibrating softly against her breasts, making her nipples ache. Dizzy and confused, she lifted her hands to push him away, but the scent of his skin intoxicated her. I know him. Her fingers slipped into the silky hair at his nape. The expert slanting of his lips across hers made her shiver. He hummed a soothing sound and stroked the length of her spine, gentling his kiss. The soft glide of his tongue, the deep licks, the gentle urging of his hips that rocked his erection against her. She moaned into his mouth. Aiden. His name came out of nowhere, filled with yearning and heated demands. I'm here, hot stuff. As if he knew her, as if he had come here for her. And that endearment, she felt as if she'd heard it before, in his voice. Her chest heaving with panting breaths, Lissa closed her eyes and rested her cheek on his shoulder. Her breath gusted across his exposed throat, making him shudder and hug her tighter. I don't remember you, she whispered, inwardly certain they must have met. No, been intimate at some point in her life. He nuzzled his cheek against the top of her head and breathed deeply. Don't you? I don't. The last time she felt this disoriented was when she'd polished off a bottle of Captain Morgan with her best friend. I'll make the introductions then. His voice was a rough caress. You're Lissa Bates. I'm Aiden Cross. You're Aiden? I'm crazy. His chuckle rumbled upward and made her toes curl. Then he stepped into her house as if he had every right to, and kicked the door closed behind him. Strangely secure in his embrace, Lissa leaned back to look at him, which was a mistake. The look he gave her was richly sexual and warmly amused. It was affectionate and appreciative, a lover's look. He wrapped his fist in her hair and tugged her head back to lick and nibble at her throat, overpowering her with the pure erotic heat he exuded. She was not as surprised by his actions as she should have been. The gesture was deeply comforting, the touch of his lips to her skin as natural as breathing. He was so arrogantly assured, so confident of his right to touch her as he desired. I've lost my mind, she said with a sigh of defeat. Finally. He nipped her earlobe. Or maybe I fell asleep, and this is my dream. It would be totally okay to make out with hot strangers in dreams. Aiden paused. Totally okay to make out with this stranger. I've been reading too many romance novels with alpha males, she muttered. Then her tummy growled, loudly. At first she thought it was JB, but no, he was rubbing up against Aiden Cross's legs and purring like a kitten, which Jellybean had never done even when he was a kitten. The darn cat had been born grumpy. They'd both gone crazy, which was oddly comforting. You didn't eat all day again? Aiden chastised, scowling down at her. Dream guys don't scold. As he set her away from him, Lissa clung to his rock-hard forearms for balance. I get enough of that from my mother. You need scolding to get you to eat regularly. You're going to need your strength. He stepped back and then teetered. Whoa! Are you okay? She steadied his significant weight with great difficulty. I've got jet lag, I think. She sighed loudly. Fantasies weren't supposed to get jet lag, so either this was real, and she had just made out with a stranger, or this was the oddest dream ever. Of course, she'd only recently started remembering vague pieces of dreams, so maybe all the ones she couldn't recall had been a bit wacky too. How depressing. Pushing him toward the sofa, she went along with the weirdness and asked, Where are you from? Aiden smiled, and her heart did a little flip. San Diego. Right. You flew up from San Diego. No, I drove up from San Diego. He sat, settling into the down cushions with an appreciative sigh. It's less than an hour's drive, you know, when there aren't so many cars in the way. Traffic, yes, I know. So, how'd you get the jet lag? On the way to San Diego. Okay. Lissa stepped back and crossed her arms. Where did you come from before San Diego? Ireland? I admit I suck at pinning down accents, and yours is unusually luscious. Struck by sudden déjà vu at her own words, Lissa stared, arrested, as Aiden's smile widened, making him even more gorgeous. Why do I feel as if I know him so well, as if we've had this conversation before? It was surreal to be hovering over a stranger who just kissed her senseless, but no matter what she told herself, she couldn't convince herself that she had done something wrong. You're very sexy when you're grumpy, he said. Yeah? Well, you're very sexy when you're grinning like an idiot. And I'm not grumpy. Now where did you come from? Your dreams. Okay, now I know I'm asleep. Real-life hot guys don't say corny shit like that. It hadn't really sounded corny, though. It had sounded sweet, kind of breathless, as if he was really happy to see her. He caught her hand and tugged her into his lap. She considered a token protest, then thought, screw it. He was hot and nice, and she was insane. Did we date in kindergarten or something? She asked, studying his features with a frown. Or something, he replied evasively. As a doctor, you're trained to look for specific signs, and then based on those you narrow it down to a diagnosis. Lissa arched a brow at her dream guy. Something like that. But sometimes you just have to go with your gut, right? Like now. You don't remember me, but you're pretty sure about me anyway. No, the only thing I'm sure about is that I'm certifiable. Aiden closed his eyes and shook his head. Released from the snare of that intense gaze, Lissa was able to look at the rest of his features more closely. His cheeks were flushed, his lips red. She touched his forehead with her inner wrist and detected fever. You're burning up. It's not contagious, he assured her, his eyes opening and his arms tightening when she tried to stand. I'm just adjusting, I think. To what? Let me up. Wiggling, she broke free. You should be in bed. We can reminisce about where we know each other from some other time. I could really use a bed. I haven't slept in 2 days. Lissa stared at Aiden's upturned face with wide eyes. Long flight, huh? Do you need help finding a hotel? The only thing I need is to be with you. He sank into the sofa back and groaned. I ache all over. Shit. What the hell was she supposed to do with him? This is where I call the police, right? Hello, 911? The hottest man I've ever seen, also the best kisser and best smelling guy ever, just accosted me and is now passed out on my... She watched with mouth agape as J.B. crawled into Aiden's lap and settled comfortably, nuzzling his gray and black head into her dream guy's abdomen. Aiden lifted his hand and rubbed her cat behind the ears, even though he was obviously sick as a dog. The tender gesture made her feel all mushy inside. Please don't, he breathed, his head falling back. You know me. You. Me. You and I. He yawned and looked adorable. I'm sorry. I don't mean to fall asleep like this. I've never felt this crappy in my life. And your couch is comfortable. Yeah, well, don't mention it, she said lamely. But you should take something for that fever. Before she knew what she was doing, Lissa walked into the kitchen and fetched a bottle of Tylenol. Her hands shook as she opened it. Aiden. She had known his name. Surely that meant she knew him. Why the hell couldn't she remember? The ringing of the phone caused her to jump and drop the bottle on the floor. Lucky for her, the child-proof cap hung in there. She leaned over the sink and grabbed the receiver, glancing aside to see her guest fast asleep on her couch. The sight of him, so large and formidable, now sprawled and relaxed, made her sigh. Even wearing ill-fitting clothes, Aiden Cross made her mouth water. Dr. Bates, she said in muted tones as she set the phone to her ear. Hey, Doc. Stacy's cheerful voice was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. I'm just reminding you that we're opening late tomorrow because of Justin's birthday thing at school. Gotcha. Thanks, I forgot, again. Lissa rounded the breakfast bar and slid onto her customary stool so she could drink in Aiden's dark good looks while he slept. Stace? Yeah? Something weird is going on over here. Hot monkey sex? Lissa snorted. Since when is hot monkey sex weird? True. Weird to me is when the doorbell rings and the most delicious man you've ever seen walks in, kisses you senseless, and then camps out on your couch. Oh my God! Stacy squealed, forcing Lissa to hold the phone away from her ear. Chad finally got you to let him spend the night? Go, you! Or go, Chad! No, it's not Chad, she whispered furiously, cupping her hand over her mouth and receiver. The stunned silence on the other end made Lissa wince. Wow, Stacy gave a surprised little laugh. No judgment here, but you know I'm dying of curiosity. Who's the hunk on the couch? Well, you see, that's the thing. I'm not sure. You're not sure? Some unknown, good-looking guy came to your door, kissed you, and now he's sitting on your couch? Yeah, that's weird, all right. I'm jealous. Shit like that never happens to me. Where's my hunk delivery? Sighing, Lissa looked at her notepad and froze, shocked to her toes to see Aiden's smiling face staring back at her. My God. All kidding aside, Doc, Stacy whispered conspiratorially, as if Aiden might hear her. Do you want me to call the cops, or are you pulling my leg? Lissa traced the drawn shape of the blatantly sensual lips she'd managed to capture so well. A childhood therapist had encouraged her to take art classes, saying the ability to commit her thoughts to paper might help her to remember her dreams and share them with her mother. It hadn't worked for the purposes intended, but drawing was soothing to her, and she fell into the habit often. Lissa? Is everything okay? I feel like it is, she said absently, her heart racing, making her feel dizzier than she already was. I mean, common sense says no, but what? You're killing me! Sliding off the bar stool again, Lissa straightened her shoulders. Everything else says yes. Okay, listen. You take a picture of this guy and then hide your camera in your car. Stick a note in the bag with his name. Oh, can you get his wallet? Stacy! Lissa laughed. I think he's okay. Jellybean loves him. She stared at the sofa where JB slept in Aiden's lap like an angel. Are you an angel? No, darling, I'm not. No way, Stacy scoffed. JB doesn't like anyone, not even Justin, and everyone loves my kid. He's a great kid. Suddenly Lissa's smile was genuine. Something inside her knew the man in her living room and liked him. A lot. I'm gonna get off here, Stace. See you at 10? I better. If you don't show up to work, I'm coming over with the National Guard. What's this guy's name, anyway? Aiden Cross. I like it. Sounds edible. He is. Lissa rounded the corner and bent to pick up the Tylenol. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll expect to hear everything, Doc. Yeah. Bye. Hitting the off button, Lissa set the handset on the granite top and filled a glass with chilled water dispensed through the fridge door. Then she moved to the living room and knelt on the floor next to the couch. Leaning forward, she touched Aiden, unable to help herself. She ran a hand through the short lock of hair that hung over his forehead, and his eyes fluttered open. A soft smile curved his lips. I'm glad to be here with you. Charmer. She swallowed down the lump in her throat. If it weren't for the fierce intelligence in those dark sapphire eyes, she would think he might be a little touched in the head. Hot guys weren't usually so sweet. I bet you say that to all the ladies you barge in on. I've never said that to anyone in my life. Hot stuff. Stop it. You're making me sappy. The feeling of déjà vu struck her again. Promise me, Aiden yawned while reaching for her hand. Promise me you'll eat something while I nap. And don't fall asleep. Her brows arched. No? He shook his head, his gaze intent on her face. No. Stay awake until I get up. Okay. She cupped his cheek and felt his high temperature just before he shivered violently. But you have to promise to take these. Shaking 2 tablets out of the bottle and into her hand, Lissa made him swallow them, despite his wince of displeasure. Then she arranged him on the couch and covered him with her throw. J.B. moved up to his standard spot on the armrest with an irritated flick of his tail. "Eat," Aiden ordered. "No sleep." "I got it." Lissa watched him fall into a fitful slumber and studied his features for a long time after that. Then she made herself a sandwich and sat at the dining table with her book about dreams and reincarnation, and thought about love at first sight. Burning. As awareness took over, that was the first thing that registered in Aiden's mind. A scorching breeze moved over him, blistering his skin, drying his nostrils, cracking his lips. The air was fetid, filled with the stench of death and despair. Opening his eyes, he found himself facing the gateway, tied to a pole with his arms behind him. Nightmares poured out in endless, unchecked numbers. Around him, hundreds of voices shouted, casting blame at his feet for actions he couldn't remember. He was alone, except for the slender, golden-haired figure who reached for the door. "No!" Aiden jerked awake, startling J.B., who screeched in alarm, his heart racing. It took him a moment to realize where he was. He ran both hands through his hair, wincing at the damp roots and his sticky skin. Nightmares. The bastards. He was no longer safe from them in his sleep. They dug deep into his mind, finding his fears and feeding on them. He felt drained and on edge at the same time. Never having met his foe unguarded before, he felt violated, wretched. His stomach heaved. Seeking the only true solace he had ever known, Aiden turned his head toward the low drone of the TV and saw Lissa at his side, seated on the floor. It was dark, the blinds drawn, the only illumination coming from the flickering light of the television and the aquarium in the dining room. He reached for her, running his hand through the loose golden strands he loved. She moved, sliding slowly away toward the floor. A dead weight. The panic he'd recently retreated from flared anew, pounding through his blood until his heart was ready to explode. He leaped from the couch, barely catching her slumping body before it hit the floor. "Lissa!" He shook her violently. "Damn it! I told you to stay awake!" Her eyelids fluttered, but her subconscious was already connected to the deadly twilight. The cry that tore from him was both desperate and inhuman. His nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. Chapter 7. As icy shards tore into her flesh, Lissa flailed in agony, her subconscious pulling free of the mechanical banging and insidious whispers that were tearing her mind apart. She gulped down a massive breath into tight lungs and opened her throat to scream. Instead, her mouth was covered, increasing her terror. Struggling to breathe and desperate to evade the needles that struck her everywhere, she clawed at the unyielding arms that trapped and held her immobile. Sucking in air through her nose, she smelled a scent that caused her eyes to fly open, and met darkly determined sapphire blue ones. Panicked, she clung to the wet, hard body that held hers so rigidly. She gasped for breath, inhaling Aiden's exhale as he swallowed her cries with the heat of his mouth. Suddenly her surroundings became clear. The stone tile of her bathroom, the freezing spray from the showerhead behind her, the fully dressed form pressed so tightly to hers. She ceased her struggles, sagging into him, so relieved to be in safe arms after the horror of only a moment before. He tore his mouth away, breathing harshly, his embrace so tight that no water slipped between them. The feel of his chest was warm, a stark contrast to the river of melted ice water that coursed down her back. It's cold, she complained, circling his powerful upper back with her arms. Turning, he took the brunt of the water from her, the tensing of his jaw the only sign of his discomfort. Lissa attempted to step away, to free her arms to adjust the temperature, but he held fast. Let me turn up the heat. It took him a long moment to do as she asked, as if he was reluctant to release her. Reaching around him, Lissa turned the knob. The water began to heat, and steam rose around them. Then she chanced another look up. A tick in his jaw matched his formidable scowl. "I told you not to fall asleep," he bit out. "I didn't mean to." Her arms wrapped his waist in a vain effort to warm up. Aiden moved then, his hands catching the hem of her shirt and tugging upward. If he hadn't looked so formidable, she might have protested his forwardness, or she might not have. "You scared the crap out of me," he muttered, intensely focused on stripping her bare. She moved with him, taking his silent commands, understanding by his forcefulness that he was a man who bore the weight of power and responsibility with unusual finesse. Despite how her wet clothes clung to her skin, he had her undressed in no time at all, an expert. The absolute certainty that he undressed women often added to her sense of unrest. "Yeah, well," she began grumpily. "I got the crap scared out of me too, so, She grunted as he tugged her into him and crushed her close. Her stiffened frame relaxed immediately, and she sank into his strength and the comfort he offered. "I'll take care of you," he promised gruffly. "Don't be scared." She almost cried. Unlike everyone else in her life who told her what she had to do to make herself feel better, see the doctor, take more meds, eat healthier, Aiden took the burden completely from her. She gave it to him gladly. "I had the worst nightmare," she confided. "There was pounding and banging against metal, grinding and scratching, and this god-awful wailing sound. You can't just drift into sleep." He gave her a little shake to emphasize his words. "You've got to fall hard and fast into it." Tilting her head back, she caught the torment in his gaze, amazed to realize he cared about her, more than casually. "You scare me, too." "No," Aiden shook his head. "You trust me. You need me." "That's what's scary." She felt safe with him, her fear unable to affect her when he was in her arms. That dependence on something so new was frightening. Could she trust something she didn't comprehend? His lips brushed across hers, firm and delicious, the taste of him lingering, teasing her already heightened senses. Her tongue traced the curve of his lower lip, seeking more of it. The quiver of fear in her belly intensified, and then turned into something else. He exhaled harshly and pulled away, resting his forehead against hers, his hair dripping water down her cheek. The mood around them altered, the anxiety she felt turning into a very different kind of desperation. His eyes slid closed, then he began to free the buttons of his shirt. She stepped backward and gaped as a deep, strangely familiar heat spread through her chilled limbs. Stacy kept a Chippendales calendar on the wall at the clinic. Not one of the men displayed on those pages could hold a candle to Aiden Cross. He was solid, rippling muscle, every line, curve, and plane flexing with latent power and pure masculine grace. He was more lean than bulk, more sinew than bulging mass. "Gorgeous," she breathed, before she could turn her brain on enough to keep her mouth shut. Chad had never once made her feel this hunger. She hadn't even known it was possible to crave someone like this. The look Aiden gave her in response to her praise was scorching, needy, and unmistakable. She wasn't a slouch in the figure department, but Aiden was perfection in a way that unsettled her. There was something about him, a foreign quality that called to her, a sense of being. More beautiful, more intense, more sexually charged, more than a mere man, though she couldn't see where that thought came from. A god. Suddenly shy, Lissa turned slightly to the side. When he caught her by the elbow and tugged her back around, she blinked in surprise. "I'm looking at you," he rumbled arrogantly. She raised her brows. "Yeah, I'm looking at you too." "Stop trying to hide." "Stop being so bossy." His gaze narrowed. Then he released her and reached for his belt. Thoughts of anything else were impossible when her brain was fully focused on him and the fact that he was about to be naked. The end of the belt slapped against the wall when Aiden yanked it free. Despite the closed fly, the pants fell from his lean hips into a soggy puddle at his feet. Part of her brain wondered why his clothes were so damn big. The other part could care less, far more interested in the cock that curved upward to almost touch his belly button. Her mouth went dry. Long, thick, and pulsing with veins. It was a wet dream come to life. "Where did you come from? Your dreams?" And he was dripping wet and getting wetter. She giggled. He leaned back and arched a brow, his mouth slightly raised in a half-smile that urged her to cup his cheek. He was too arrogant and self-assured to take her momentary amusement as anything to do with the size of that impressive cock, and she loved him for it. "Let's get cleaned up," he said, tugging her closer again. Then he reached for the liquid soap, squirted some into his palm, and went to work. On her body. She jerked in surprise when his slick hands cupped her breasts. He tried to look innocent, but with the mischievous gleam in his eyes, it didn't work. Never one to back down from a challenge, Lissa scooped up a trail of bubbles from her tummy and grabbed his cock. He arched a brow and washed between her legs. She arched her own and tugged at his balls. Her chest rose and fell rapidly in response to how intimately and possessively he touched her. Aiden took note, adjusting his movements with unparalleled skill. There was none of the hesitation or silent query that other men displayed with a new partner, and she showed none with him, washing his cock and balls as if it was her right to do so. Aiden laughed, the severity of his expression softening with obvious affection. "You're a handful, hot stuff." "So are you." She shot a pointed glance at her overflowing hands. "More than a handful." Leaning forward, he pressed a kiss to her forehead, the tender gesture so at odds with the sinful way he stoked her desire. As he moved around her, running his hands all over her, her eyes slid closed on a sigh. Her blood was hot and sluggish, her mind lost in the sensual spell he wove so well. Low and deep within her, she ached, clenching in emptiness and expectation of what she knew was coming. If this was a dream, she didn't want to wake up. Never in her life had she'd known wanting like this, a need so intense she was panting with it, her knees weakening until he was forced to hold her upright with easy strength. "Was it spring break in Cabo?" she asked breathlessly. "Huh?" He pulled back to look down at her, revealing half-lidded eyes that couldn't hide the burning lust within. "When we met, Cabo San Lucas. That's the last time I remember that I can't remember." "Ah, I get it. No." Catching her shoulders, he spun her away from him, and a moment later his strong fingers were rubbing shampoo into her scalp. She turned into a boneless puddle. He knew just how to touch her, kneading the tense muscles of her shoulders and stroking the length of her spine until all the anxiety of her nightmare washed down the drain. She felt the calluses on his palms and the strength he wielded with such care. When he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her backward into the spray with him, she leaned against him with a trust she shouldn't feel, but did. "But we've had sex," she persisted, shivering at the thought of what it must have been like. He was in no rush, taking his time, as if he had an eternity, as if time didn't exist for him, if he took the same care when making love. He licked the wet shell of her ear. "Something like that." Turning in his arms, Lissa leaned her head back and met blue eyes fringed with thick, wet lashes. "Something like sex?" "Yep. Wash me." He thrust the bottle into her hands. "I want to feel your hands on me." She shook her head as she reached for the soap. She almost told him no, just to curb his arrogance, but she wanted to touch him, so much that her palms itched with the need. With soap-slicked fingertips, she slid her palms across his chest, marveling at the feel of his skin stretched taut over muscles that were hard as stone. His eyes closed on a low groan, his hands cupping her hips, his head falling back in a gesture of supplication that took her by surprise. Aiden was wallowing in her caresses, absorbing them, relishing every time she lingered in an especially susceptible spot. It was riveting, the sight of so large and dangerous a man turned to putty in her hands. And he was dangerous, she knew. There was something in his eyes. They were ancient, wizened, jaded beyond his years. And something in the way he watched her, the way he moved, the note of command in every casual phrase. This man was never without his guard. Yet here he was, bared to her in more than his appearance. So she indulged, taking her time, washing his front from his head to his toes, then turning him and paying the same attention to his rear, which was just as magnificent. When he faced her again, Lissa positioned him beneath the spray and shifted her fingers through his hair, making sure every bit of shampoo was gone. She was so much shorter than he was, she had to lift onto her tippy toes to reach him. The loss of balance forced her to lean against him, her breasts to his chest. The hard, heavy length of his erect cock pressed into her stomach, but he made no move to take things further. "I think I'm clean." He stilled her roving hands with his own before pushing her gently away. Lissa bit her lower lip in embarrassment. Nodding her agreement, she pushed open the floating glass door and reached for the towel closest to her. She didn't bother to dry herself. Instead, she wrapped the towel beneath her arms and moved to the linen closet, taking out a fresh towel, which she thrust backward without turning her head. She heard the knobs turn and the water stop. "Now you don't want to look at me?" asked softly, his fingers curling around hers, sending sharp awareness up her arm. She tugged free and moved toward the door, restless and edgy with confusion and unsatisfied arousal. She didn't know what to make of the fact that he had touched her so intimately, then pulled back. The hardness of his cock betrayed him, as did the dark hunger in his gaze, but he put on the brakes. So why was he here at her house, driving her crazy if he didn't want to get laid? "I'll give you some privacy," she muttered. Her hand was reaching for the knob when Aiden caught her in a full-body embrace, his arms pinning hers, his bare chest behind her, his erection an unmistakable pressure against her lower back. "Talk to me." His lips were hot against her neck. She shuddered with the force of her craving, her heart leaping into a mad rhythm. "What's the matter, Lissa?" One arm crossed upward between her breasts, his biceps bulging beneath her gripping palms, his fingers angling her jaw toward his waiting mouth. He kissed her at the same moment he rolled his hips with practiced grace, inundating her from all sides with the feel of him. "I was trying to save my sanity," he whispered into her mouth. "Not discourage you." Moaning, she spent the space of one breath resisting him, and then she gave in, her tongue meeting his, then chasing his, as he advanced and retreated with deep licks. "More," she demanded, her nails in his flesh. His hand at her throat shook. "Not in here. Take me to your bed." "I'm not sure I can make it." She writhed against him, stroking that thick, hard cock with the upper curve of her buttocks. "It's on the other side of the door." "Too far." He bent his knees, notching himself between the cheeks of her ass, and began to rub against her. His free hand touched her thigh and then slid up beneath her towel. A hungry sound vibrated against her back when he cupped her wet pussy. "You're so slick and hot," he purred. "I could slide into your cunt from behind, ride you hard, right here, just the way you like it, just the way I like it." His fingers mimicked the actions he described, slipping into her, pumping knuckle-deep and fast. "Yes." Her head lolled against his shoulder, her lips parted, wanting more of him. She licked at him desperately, her tongue flickering, trying to taste him. "Do it." "I could bend you over the counter, facing our reflections. You could watch me take you." The growl that rumbled up from his chest was pure sexual hunger. His coarse words made her nipples hard, made her pussy quiver around his fingers, made her cry out softly, "Aiden." But I won't, Lissa. Not this time. This time, I want you naked and spread out on a bed for my pleasure. As his skin heated with his desire, the scent of him, spicy and rich, filled her nostrils. It was achingly familiar, making her womb clench tight in recognition. His hand slid from her neck and cupped her breast, squeezing it, making it swell. Her knees gave out, but he held her tightly. All the while he fucked her mouth with those delicious thrusts of his tongue and urged his hips against her in a wicked imitation of what she really wanted. "I'm going to make you come in 1,000 different ways," he promised. "Around my fingers, against my lips, around my cock. I'm going to wear you out, exhaust you,